So we can't talk about any of that. So instead, the theme for this week is Donald Trump is a dangerous dictator and an asshole.
We have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now.
All right. It's been a couple weeks. Welcome back to Let Me Tell You Why That's Bullshit, everyone. We've been off because Rio has been away in Cambodia. Lucky bastard. So before we get into all that, quickly tell us, how was your trip?
It was pretty good. So we took basically just 4 days to see all the temples we could around Siem Reap. So we saw Angkor Wat and all the really big fancy temples. Got a lot of pictures, got a bit of food poisoning, so that's fun. But yeah, overall, it was a couple things I learned about Cambodia, which is really interesting. One, it's an elected monarchy with a hereditary military dictatorship, which is a very strange political arrangement. And I also learned that apparently Vietnam has a lot of political influence in Vietnam because our tour guide kept ranting about it. So it's really cool to hear. So that was fun.
Interesting. And then you got to come home.
Yeah, then I came home to the swirl of bullshit, and a friend of mine, so for those who weren't aware, Nicole told me not to read any news while I was away. And then
a friend of mine, favor.
Yeah, really saved the trip. And then a friend of mine texted me, he's like, "Did you see what happened in the Oval Office?" And I was like, "Nope." Then he sent me the Zelensky clip. And I was like, cool, well, better start prepping. So
yeah, that's a great segue because we were going to talk about Pierre Poilievre's Canada First rally that he held. We were going to talk about Mark Carney going on the Rest is Politics US, which for those that don't know is Anthony Scaramucci's show. I didn't know this, but apparently they are really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Side note on that, the more I learn about Mark Carney, the more I'm like, this guy's totally just a conservative. So I hope we all wanted to get either one conservative or another because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Although, I mean, being appointed by Stephen Harper should have been the flag that he's a conservative, right?
Fun. Sorry, I was making a note. I will link in the description for everyone the Canada First rally because I think you all need to watch it. I will link Mark Carney's appearance on The Rest is Politics US. And I'll link Freeland also did their show, but she did the British version of that show. I wanted to talk about that because she made fun of British people in her weird mom way, which was kind of hilarious. We were going to talk about Mark Carney on Rosemary Barton, who he did that the day after he did The Rest is Politics, and she hated him. I don't know what was up with that, but I don't know if she was just mad because he spent an hour with Scaramucci and then spent 15 minutes with her. And so the whole interview was just her firing questions at him and him trying to explain and then her being like, "Oh, we don't have time for your full answer." Let's move on.
God damn.
So
really solid journalism these days, you know?
You know what though? He gave her 16 minutes. So she was trying to get out of him what he would do with tariffs and deficit stuff and policies. One thing that is relevant that I'll say about this now, and again, I will link everything below. She asked him what he would do in negotiating with Donald Trump and what he would do if he imposed tariffs. And what was really interesting is Mark Carney said, obviously I have a strategy for that, but he's not negotiating with me. So it would be really stupid of me to insert myself in that and say what I would do.
Yeah. That's a really dumb strategy.
Right? So I thought that that was like super interesting, which was right in the middle of everybody else saying what they would do.
Well, like,
Everyone from Chrystia Freeland to Pierre Poilievre.
yeah, and like you never want someone to know. Like this is one of those situations where you really want to play your cards closer to your chest, right? Like you can't have people know what your strategy is going into it, especially when you're dealing with someone as volatile as Donald Trump, right?
Yeah. Ugh. So we can't talk about any of that. So instead, the theme for this week is Donald Trump is a dangerous dictator and an asshole. I'm sure that surprises no one. So let's jump right on in. And actually, where we're going to start this week is with polling. And the reason I want to do that is because I think it'll be interesting later when we talk about the tariffs in the last segment. So let's look at polling, and let's start with, I'll play a video from the Nanos polling, and then we'll take a look at the other two polls, because it would seem that from Pierre's major lead that he had in December, he no longer has that lead.
Last couple of weeks, something remarkable has been playing out in federal political polling. The Liberals, currently undergoing a leadership contest, are neck and neck in the polls with the Conservatives. Nick Nanos of Nanos Research is our pollster, and he joins us from Toronto, where, Nick, you're prepping for tonight's Ontario election. We'll talk about that in a sec, but let's get to what's going on federally. I remember in a previous conversation we had that you don't recall ever seeing a political party overcome a 20-plus deficit in the polls. The Liberals seem to be doing that.
Absolutely. It looks like the Liberals perhaps might make history in terms of turning things around. You know, if we look at the numbers, you know, back in January, you can see, why do we call this, Todd? Peak conservative, 47%, 20% for the Liberals, a 27-point advantage for the Conservatives. At that time, even in Atlantic Canada was looking like a blue sweep. But fast forward from January 10th to basically February 21st, check it out, 37-33, factoring the margin of error. This is basically a horse race now. The Liberals are back in the game in Atlantic Canada. They're up in Quebec and they're up in British Columbia. The Conservatives are still holding strong in Ontario, but, you know, right now, it's a horse race.
Do you think that the Trump factor is solely responsible for that climb?
Three quick things. First of all, Justin Trudeau stepping down. A lot of Canadians say, hey, that guy's not going to be on the ballot. Second, Donald Trump and the tariffs, because now people are focused on that as opposed to anger at the Liberals. And third, you know, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives being a little flat-footed at focusing on Trump. Roll those three things up, and you take a 27-point advantage, and gone.
Okay, well, let's talk about advantages, point advantages. Doug Ford's...
No, we don't care about Doug Ford. Doug Ford won, spoiler alert.
Yeah, weird. That guy that was already polling pretty well before the election won the election. What a weird thought, right? But
Right.
like, I just quickly want to say, like, way to fumble the ball, Pierre.
But we love it because that guy is a lunatic as well.
Yeah, different type of suck, but yeah, way to fumble. Glad to see it.
So that poll was from, Nick Nanos was talking about his polling, which he did February 21st. Ipsos did one on February 25th, which basically showed the same. You can see that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
It basically showed the same, but here's the really interesting part. So the Liberals basically have come back from like what they thought was going to be like not even getting party status to a 36. Well, in the Ipsos poll, it shows 38% to Conservative 36. So in the Ipsos poll, they've surpassed the Conservatives.
Yep.
But look at the NDP.
Yeah.
They're sitting at 12%. Like, I think we're also going to see an ABC election.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I mean anything but conservative. And I think between Singh's unpopularity and people wanting to keep Poilievre out, Poilievre's not tanking, but like he's not doing that great in Quebec at all. That's going to be a problem, and we might see a. I'm kind of worried for the state of the NDP, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah. So since I was away and I didn't really like follow the news at all while I was gone, did Polyev make any appearances in Quebec to try and like fix things there, or did he just kind of like ignore them and be like, we don't need Quebec like he did last time?
Not that I know of, but to be totally honest, I was also watching like all the stuff with Trump and trying to find stuff on the liberal leadership race, because I am obviously really worried that like literally the liberals have one fucking job, and it's to vote for Mark Carney.
Yep.
But I've been really, really worried that there's just this like little part of me that's like, people are fucking stupid. They voted for Trump.
Let's vote for Karina Gould.
or worse, Chrystia Freeland, right?
Yeah.
Like Karina isn't polling high. Like this is definitely a race between Chrystia and Mark, 100%. Like to the point where I know you didn't watch it, but in Poilievre's, I guess we are talking about it, in Poilievre's Canada First rally, he managed to finally figure out a way to talk about Trudeau by calling it the Trudeau-Carney Liberals. So like, Mark hasn't even been elected yet. And even the Conservatives are like, this is who we're going to be running against, because the Liberals can't be that big, that much of an idiot, can they?
Yeah.
But yes, they can.
It's funny you mentioned that actually, because I was actually thinking, you saying that just brought this into my mind, because I was on Instagram while I was in Cambodia, which surprisingly worked. And of course, I still get political crap in my Instagram and my YouTube all the time. And a lot of comments were like, oh, Mark Carney's just like Justin, hashtag just like Justin. That's the thing, right? So, and also surprisingly, Mark Carney keeps showing up on my Instagram page these days. So like, thanks, Meta, I guess.
Yeah, well, they've just gone political, right? So, okay, so real quickly, March 2nd, the federal projects put out this poll, which doesn't show like, it's not as close, but look at this. Nanos was talking about how they still had a stronghold in Ontario. That no longer seems to be the case. If an election was held today, Canada Federal Projects is projecting the Liberals would take Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. That's insane. So really, okay, because these two places, it's just not a thing.
Yeah, you're running as a Liberal or NDP in Alberta, and Saskatchewan's like fucking running as a Democrat in Alabama, right?
Like it's not going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So they got to get BC, and pull in some more in Manitoba.
Yeah.
This here is why I don't think this is good for the NDP. Like, look at this. The NDP would win 14 seats. If you get less than 12, you lose party status.
Yeah. And they're dangerously close. And like the block will always be the block, right? But the thing is too, is Jagmeet Singh is just so wildly unpopular. Like I'm a member of the Alberta NDP and I fucking hate the guy, right? Like I literally I don't feel like I can support his policy, right?
He's also
he's just so unlikable. He's
terrible.
Yeah, like he's just a really like, I don't know, I look at him and I'm like, man, just give me Tom Mulcair. Like I like Mulcair.
This tells me that two things will happen. Number one, we're going to get a new NDP leader, because there's no way we won't after this.
I mean, if Jagmeet Singh stays on after like such a fantastic loss, like clearly the NDP's given up on ever winning an election, right?
Well, but here's the other interesting thing. What if, and I don't think this will happen, because I think Carney will be like, no, I need to win a seat, fuck off.
Yep.
But with these numbers, I think Singh is going to change his tune and be like, no, this is too important to go into an election. Let's work together. We'll prop you up again. I hope Mark Carney tells him to go fuck himself.
Yeah.
And just goes into an election. But I think the NDP stand to lose more seats.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah.
And they kind of need to in order for the Liberals, like based on this polling, which I think is probably the most accurate.
Yeah, I definitely don't see any sort of situation where Mark Carney is like, yeah, I'm going to be the unelected prime minister.
So
Like, like Danielle Smith is the unelected premier, and like, I fucking hate her guts.
Yeah, but we're weird Albertans.
I know Albertans are just so fucking like, oh god, can't have anything. Like, oh, it's Danielle Smith, totally fine that she's unelected. But if an NDP leader did that, they would have to be fucking rioting in the streets. Like, we live in the most like gaslit 100%. Province.
100%. So that's where we sit in the polls, and obviously we're going to keep an eye on that. And hopefully for our next pod, we can dive into this more because the Liberal election is Sunday.
Yeah.
And we're going to know more, I think, after that. If you are a Liberal Party member, vote smart.
Yeah.
If you are an NDP voter, and like I'm about to say something that's going to get me crucified in the comments, but I stopped reading the comments, so fuck y'all. Be strategic, for the love of God. ABC. The NDP, look at this, people. The NDP are not going to win. You're not going to get your NDP policies right now. So unless you want Pierre, please vote smart.
Yeah.
This goes for Green Party too.
I tell my friends this during like every election where it's like, because we live in first past the post, which is like the world's stupidest voting system, like vote strategically. Because like if someone has policies that you don't like, but someone has policies that you can like kind of tolerate, vote for the person who's like slightly more likely to put the policies that you can kind of tolerate.
Well, and let me tell you, if you're an NDP voter or a Green Party voter and you don't like the Liberal policies, I can tell you what you're going to think of the Conservative Party's policies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, you're going to fucking hate them.
Yeah, it's also if like on the political compass, like here's the Conservatives, here's like the Liberals, and like here's where you are, and you want to align yourself with the people on the other side of the fucking compass, like you're in for trouble, right?
Yeah, so nobody do that. And I'm sorry, Angel. I was yelling and she like jumped up. She's, for those that don't know, she is my 12-year-old. She's 12 next week, Rio. Tripod on slippy floors.
Oh.
Okay, so we're done with that. Spoiler alert for later. We're going to talk about Truth Social.
Yep.
Let's move on to the US being an Axis power. How does that feel? We're living next to Russia's puppet.
Great. I just also want to quickly mention, I literally just checked the World News subreddit, and one of the articles is senior Conservative MP says the UK must consider the possibility that Trump is a Russian asset. So like, what a perfect segue.
There has been a bunch of articles like that. And not just Trump, like Tulsi Gabbard. She was on Fox News spewing out literal propaganda that's on Russian television.
Yep.
I didn't pull the clip because for the love of God, there's just so many, Rio. I did, however, pull this clip that we're going to watch. And I think, because what I want to talk about is, before we get into like tariff stuff, I want to talk about Ukraine, because obviously, as you talked about earlier, like that's been a big news story. America, not the American people before you. The American government did something absolutely despicable on Friday afternoon. But it really all started in Munich at the security conference. And that's kind of where we saw, I mean, I shouldn't say that. We knew that Trump was a sympathizer to Putin.
Yep.
As we'll see later, Zelensky had to sit in the Oval Office and listen to Trump be like, oh, poor Putin, he's lost so many people in the war, and blah, blah, blah. Like, the poor dictator. But I don't think until the security conference came up, that's really when everything kind of started. People started to take it more seriously. Like even the last podcast, like I got like a random email from somebody saying that I was like a fearmonger because like it's not going to be that bad and Trump wasn't like this in his first term. And I think people still don't understand that in Trump's first term, he surrounded himself with like relatively normal-ish Republicans.
Yeah. Now we're dealing with JD Vance and the fucking like of his ilk.
Yeah.
Right.
And the rest
not to mention like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, like every tech bro billionaire that you could possibly involve in government. Right.
Well, and the Republicans that are left are just like spineless assholes. Like Marco Rubio was a proponent of US aid. He was somebody that spoke out in favor of Ukraine for years. As we saw in the last podcast, like I played the clips of like Rubio a few years ago talking about US aid, and then Rubio a couple weeks ago talking about US aid and like supporting Trump. Well, now I didn't, because again, lots of shit. But there are lots of video out there of Rubio talking about Ukraine. And like, in case people don't understand this, like, here's a visual for you.
Yeah.
Europe, Ukraine, Russia. Right now, the Ukraine's the only thing standing in between them.
Yep.
Canada, Europe, the US, they're not like giving billions of dollars to Ukraine out of the goodness of their hearts. They're giving that money to the Ukraine because A, they're an ally, and B,
it's geopolitically expedient, right? Like you can have someone fight your war for you, like for pennies on the dollar, compared to having your own soldiers and your own assets in the field, right? Like it makes a lot more sense to be funding Ukraine from a defense standpoint than it does to fight the war yourself. And like, it's also really sad that like, you know, it took Donald Trump pulling aid from Ukraine, and then Europe woke up, Canada woke up, and we were like, oh shit, we can't depend on our biggest military partner now. We actually have to figure out how to fight for ourselves, right?
Yeah. But what's interesting is like Europe's still given lots of money to Ukraine.
Yep.
Donald Trump keeps saying that like he's given them more. It's not that much more.
Like if you look at the numbers, I'm pretty sure, isn't it like Europe and the US are like almost on par? But yeah.
Almost dollar for dollar. And it's not 500 billion, by the way. Trump trying to extort Zelensky. You heard about that, right? Because we're going to talk about that later. Okay, so let's just watch this like quick clip. It's going to like start right away because I have a new computer and I'm not used to Windows yet. But I think it like really is where the tide turned. So let's
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer in the public square, agree or disagree. Because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
I mean, I just want to point out that he literally says like the threat from within, like pot meet kettle, right?
well, and like okay, so like the balls on this guy.
Yeah.
Trump is literally, okay, I don't even know where to start. Trump is literally going after anybody who's speaking out against him in America, and he's talking to fucking Europe about free speech.
Yeah.
Just as an example, let's like just look at the media again. He settled a suit, like, and these are frivolous lawsuits that he's bringing about, right? Like, he just settled one with Disney because of the ABC thing where they like edited a interview with Kamala and he didn't like it, and he said that it was like I can't even remember how much he was suing them for, but it was something ridiculous, like $16 million or something.
Yeah.
And Disney settled with him. Paramount is currently scrambling because they have a merger that has to be approved by the FCC.
Yeah. And
they were looking at settling a frivolous lawsuit that was brought about and giving money to Donald Trump's library. David Pakman. Do you watch the David Pakman show?
No, I've been yeah.
but so there's like kind of like 3, maybe 4 sort of independent media, big YouTube media in the US. The Bulwark, Brian Tyler Cohen, the Midas Touch Network, and David Pakman. And last week, David Pakman came on his show and said that he was warned by lawyers, like not his lawyers, just lawyers in DC. They contacted him and said, Trump is coming after you guys. You need to make sure that you have all of your sources. You need to make sure that you're like keeping up with your lawyers, basically. And then literally the next night, on his show, he shared an email from a guy that's serving in the US military right now.
Yeah.
He's overseas, and he sent him screenshots showing that he could not access the David Pakman website, but he could access a whole bunch of right-wing conservative websites.
Yep.
YouTube was still accessible, so he's able to get David Pakman's show on YouTube, but he like sent all these screenshots of that. And so David Pakman said like, hey, if you're in like work for the Department of Defense, or if you're like overseas, like, can you let us know, like, are you having these same problems?
Yeah.
So this is like scary. Like, he's literally just going after media.
This is literally the censorship of free speech, which is like, it's what dictators do, right? Like, and it's not just here, and it's not just like, fucking JD Vance and Donald Trump. Every dictator at some point has done this. And like, I can even think of like recently in the Philippines too, with I think it was under President Duterte, where like a bunch of like journalists got imprisoned or like straight up murdered. I'm pretty sure it was just imprisoned, but so don't quote me on that. But I'm basing this on a very loose reading of how to spot a dictator. So,
but Putin did that in Russia.
Exactly, and like, and
people are like poison his political opponents when they're in other countries.
Yeah, and people are seeing like the political playbook, literally like the dictator's playbook, dictator's handbook, literally play out in front of them. They're like, no, this isn't fucking dictatorship yet. Like, how can you not see it, right? Or alternatively, like, how can you see it and be like, oh no, our guy isn't the bad guy here. It's still the Democrats, right?
I wrote a piece like last week or the week before, literally outlining like, here's what Trump did, here's what Hitler did. Yeah. And we're talking like pre-Holocaust. So like, we didn't have like gas chambers and shit yet.
Yeah, like 1928 Hitler.
Yeah, this was all like him, like controlling the media. I mean, don't get me wrong. He tried to go from like elected to killing the Jews. Yeah. But that didn't work out because people were like, what the fuck are you doing? And so he realized he had to go more slowly and first make it so that people would hate Jewish people.
Yeah.
Which he did quite successfully in the end, which led to the Night of the Long Knives.
Yeah.
So on that note, let's go through the timeline of the stuff with Ukraine.
Sure.
I will post again, there's gonna be so many links in the descriptions, guys. BBC had a really great timeline that started on January 22nd. So on January 22nd, and actually, let me just, is this it? No. Okay, I was gonna like pull it up just to be like, so that people could like see it. Okay. So I'm just gonna leave this here. I'm gonna share this like in the description box, but somebody yelled at me a couple weeks ago for like not putting up enough articles. So like you are all getting a lot of freaking articles.
Yep. Okay.
So here's for the record, BBC, and they had a like super awesome timeline. So fast forward January 22nd, 2025. Trump writes on Truth Social, "It's time to make a deal. We can do it the easy way or the hard way." On Ukraine. January 23rd, Trump tells the World Economic Forum that Zelensky wants to make a deal, but Putin might not. February 15th, Zelensky writes that he has begun working with Trump's team, adding, "The world is looking up to America as the power that has the ability to not only stop the war, but also help ensure the reliability of peace afterwards." Remember, and this is like him referring to, you know, the 80 years of peace we had. And I think this is a good time to mention that Ukraine got rid of their nuclear arsenal in exchange for security guarantees from the US.
And the UK, yeah.
And the UK, yeah. But like mainly it was like the US.
Yeah.
Fucking Trump. Okay. February 18th, US-Russia talks about ending the war begin in Saudi Arabia. Zelensky tells reporters that the talks took place behind Ukraine's back, adding, "Once again, decisions about Ukraine are being made without Ukraine."
Yeah.
So Trump sends a fucking delegation to Saudi Arabia to talk about the fate of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Cool. Also
Cool.
on February 18th, after the talks, Trump says he was disappointed by Ukraine's reaction and appeared to blame Ukraine for starting the war, adding that the country could have made a deal earlier. In that same day, Trump said that Zelensky's approval rating was down at 4%. Now, this is going to become really important right now. February 19th was hilarious. And I don't know if if you saw any of this, but on February 19th, Zelensky responded to questions at a press conference he had about this. And he said that the US president is caught in a Russian disinformation space.
I saw that one. Also, real quick, can you scroll for me? Because I can't. It's stuck on February 18th on my screen.
Huh? Oh. I wasn't really scrolling, but I can scroll.
Okay, yeah, because I gotta like.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely saw the disinformation space thing because that was like the day before I came back from my trip and just popped up on my like Google recommendations of things to read. So
it's a great read. So he also said during this press conference, "We are standing strong on our own 2 feet. I am counting on the unity of Europe and the pragmatism of America." The Ukraine leader goes on to cite a survey, which he says suggests that 58% of Ukrainian people have confidence in him as leader, which several media outlets then confirmed.
Yeah.
He also says Ukraine is seeing a lot of disinformation from Russia. And then he goes on to say, "With all due respect to President Donald Trump as a leader, he is living in this disinformation space." So like in that sentence, he's saying like, stop fucking listening to Russia, you dumbass.
Yeah.
But, you know, like better than I would. Okay, so then on February 19th, Trump accuses Zelensky of talking the U.S. into spending $350 billion and of claiming that half of that money was missing. Trump then calls Zelensky a dictator who's done a terrible job. Now, this is important.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, okay? Here's Trump's post on Truth Social. And I'm going to subject everyone to all of this. Think of it, a modestly successful comedian. Zelensky talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the US and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization? In that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. No, he didn't. He refuses to have elections because it's unconstitutional, and Ukrainian law says that they can't in a time of war. Get fucked, Donald. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, also wrong. He has a higher rating than Trump.
Yep.
And the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle, a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia. Something I'll admit only Trump. Oh my God.
Jesus, that is like...
I was like, do I have a reading problem?
No, it's not you. It's actually just fucking
Trump.
dumb.
Something I'll admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions have unnecessarily died. And continues. Okay, so now I'm going to close Truth Social.
Yeah, I also just want to say, why is Trump in all capital letters and in quotes? Because, like, you know, the fucking, I know it's just because it's like the fucking stupid ass brand, but the cynic in me is like, this is clearly fucking like Trump, as in Putin, you know what I mean? Like, and like, let's I'm just gonna like go on this for a second, because like, as you mentioned, it's illegal for Ukraine to have an election during wartime, which makes a lot of sense. But also, like, you want to go into an election during wartime with a power that is notorious for disinformation and propaganda and manipulating elections. Like, this is something that's been documented, like, not just in Europe, but in every major democracy in Europe and North America. Like, and you're
literally why Ukraine has the law.
Exactly. And you're expecting people just like go into an election and be like, yeah, this is a fucking smart ass idea. Let's go into an election while we're at war with the power we're at war with. Like, you know, you're just asking for trouble, right?
Yeah. It's all very depressing.
Yeah. Fucking suck my dick, Donald.
Ew, you'll probably get herpes. Don't do
that. I'll get something way worse than that. Like
okay, so yeah, so we all saw Trump called him a dictator, and then Zelensky was asked about it, and he said that he isn't offended by Trump calling him a dictator. If I were a dictator, I'd be offended. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Then on February 25th, is kind of when all of this starts, where like shit starts to really hit the fan. Ukraine, well, first Ukraine denied any major mineral deals with the US had been agreed to.
Yeah.
That same day, Trump said he was expecting Zelensky in Washington to sign the deal later that week, which turned out to be true because Zelensky showed up on the 28th.
Yep.
And again, I just want to highlight that, like, this is fucking extortion.
Yeah. This is literally extortion. Like, you're having a country at war and you're being like, pay up, right?
It's literally a sitting president of the United States of America is extorting Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just talk about this for a minute, because I pulled from another BBC article. This one here is like a really long live reporting of events. So there's 7 pages. I pulled it out of somewhere in the 7 pages. I will link this for anybody that's like curious about like more in depth to the timeline. But in there, BBC was talking about the cost of the war in Ukraine. So Zelensky says the cost of the war in Ukraine is $320 billion. About 120 billion has come from Ukrainian taxpayers and 200 billion from the US and EU.
Yep.
The US supplied 67 billion in weapons as well as budget support. Trump has previously said that the US wants an equivalent of 500 billion worth of rare earth minerals from Ukraine in exchange for its continued support, which is actually new because at first it wasn't for continued support or security guarantees. It was just because he wanted it.
Yeah.
This is my favorite part though. Zelensky stated, it's not 500 billion. That's not a serious conversation.
Yeah. Do you want to switch articles for me? Because I'm seeing the timeline still. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
There
So this part, what's this? Oh, this is talking about like that 4% approval rating thing. So BBC was one of the ones that like debunked that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like he's fallen quite a bit. So he's at 58%, down from 77 at the end of 2023.
Yeah.
But here's the really crazy part. 90% in May 2022.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Who has
That
those
was-
kinds of polling numbers? Shut the fuck up, Donald.
Donald's just,
Trump has never
Donald's
seen
just
and
jealous
never
he's
will.
never that high, right?
Anyway,
Like, what's Donald Trump at right now? Isn't it something like 44% or something like that?
it's less than that.
It's less
But
than?
he's still doing better than he ever did in his first term. So, like in comparison to Donald Trump's doing great.
Yeah.
In comparison to every other president ever in their
Donald
honeymoon
Trump sucks.
period, not. And as we'll see later, things are starting to turn.
Yeah.
Before his honeymoon period's even over. Okay, so February 26th, so we're like here now. At a cabinet meeting, Trump says the presence of US workers extracting rare earth metals in Ukraine would provide automatic security. Zelensky says the success of the deal, formally backed by his government that evening, would depend on the outcome of his meeting with Trump. Spoiler alert, it went really fucking bad.
Yeah.
February 27th. Asked by the BBC whether he sticks by his claim that Zelensky is a dictator, Trump replies, "Did I say that? I can't believe I said that." So that's why that Truth Social post was really important.
Yeah.
Let's watch this.
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Yeah. Okay. So I gotta say this because every time I look at Trump, I think, how is this like the most beady-eyed motherfucker in the Oval Office? And like, second of all, like I love how if there's anything that's good out of the internet, it's that you can see in real time how quickly people will backtrack when they're like, oh, that didn't go over very well at all. Right. And like that's exactly what you saw with that is like, what was it? 3 days before, he was like, oh yeah, fucking Zelensky's a dictator, no elections, to I didn't say that. What are you talking about? Right? But like the caveat, or I guess the opposite side of that though, is like that's literally how just disinformation works, right? Like you say one thing, then it's like, oh no, I said the other. It's like, oh well, what did he really mean? Who fucking knows?
I hate everything.
I know. Join the club.
So that was during his talk with the UK Prime Minister. Oh, which by the way, it was kind of funny because after the meeting with the UK Prime Minister happened and then the blow up with Zelensky, the one thing the West was kind of saying was like, okay, Zelensky, and this is like fucking ridiculous because Donald Trump is such a man baby.
Yeah.
But people were like, okay, you probably should have like done what the UK Prime Minister did. So I don't know if you heard anything about this meeting, but he brought, I wish this was a clip I found. He brought a letter to Trump from King Charles and like handed it to him during like the press conference or whatever, because Trump's been doing this weird thing where he's having like press conferences from like before the press conference. So you know how they're like generally you like meet with the president or prime minister, like whatever, world leaders meet, and then they have like a joint press conference to like take questions. Trump has been doing it weird where like he has the press, and I'm putting that in quotation marks because
Russian media.
It's not real press. Like there's conservative plants and stuff, which is exactly what happened, as we'll see with the blowout. King Charles, but he like was trying to like, I guess, butter him up and like gave him this letter in front of like the media and everyone, and he like looked at it, and then Trump was like, what? Oh, is this it? Oh, is this it? Ooh, maybe this is it. If this is it, it'd be great. But like, so the media is saying like the prime minister of the UK, like that was on purpose. Everything he did was like, even just like the way he would like touch his arm and like, it just makes me so disgusted. But like, there's no real other way to diplomacy with Trump.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like back in Trump's first term when with Trudeau too. Like Donald Trump had that thing where he would always like pull people in with his handshake, right? And like, so when people caught on to that, and Justin, like it was time for Justin Trudeau to meet with Donald Trump, Justin Trudeau pulled back, and Donald Trump didn't expect it, right? So instead of seeing Justin Trudeau get pulled forward, you see Donald Trump get pulled forward into Justin Trudeau instead. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, yes, that is perfect. That is how you handle this man, right?
Yeah. And that brings us to February 28th.
Yep.
Zelensky arrives in Washington to discuss an agreement on sharing Ukraine's mineral resources. Okay, so let's watch what happens in real time. We'll watch as much as we can stomach.
Yep.
But if you like, you're like, I'm done, just be like, I'm done. I've seen this like 80 million times.
Let's see how far we
4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, parts of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 to
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broke this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this
Can
conflict.
you pause this for a second? Because
what problems we have?
I have been to,
Come on.
rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
I was like, where's the pause button?
Yeah, and like I gotta just like we can keep going. I'm not totally disgusted yet. But
Well,
like
it gets worse.
oh I know it gets worse. I saw a bunch of the parts where it gets worse, and they turn into a lot of memes about fucking Catan games going wrong. But like okay, so this is the type of discussion that shouldn't be happening in front of press ever, right? And like that's how you also know that this was entirely orchestrated and entirely like
I think it was hijacked by Vance.
oh yeah, it was hijacked by Vance while Russian state media was in the room, specifically to provide a like, oh look at how divided they are now bit, right? Like yeah, actually, I'm pretty disgusted. Let's move on.
Well, and like everybody's seen the video.
Yeah.
I'll link again. I will link the full one below if for whatever reason.
If you want to subject yourself to that for some reason, go nuts. But like,
Okay, so the next thing we'll watch before we move on, because we're going to talk about like how the different leaders reacted to what's happened. But here's BBC reporting on the reaction out of Russia.
The Kremlin's been tight-lipped about the spectacle that unfolded in the Oval Office, but reactions from other Russian officials are essentially supportive of Trump and his vice president. That President Zelensky alone was disrespectful. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman said she was surprised that Trump and Vance didn't slap him. The senior Russian official said it was brilliant that Zelensky was kicked out of the White House, and a key Russian envoy called the spat historic. I believe that the very public fallout between the US and Ukraine represents a sea change in US relations with its allies and with Russia. Big question now is how this episode may affect talks.
I mean, okay, that should really tell you everything you need to know about, you know, Russia. Like the Kremlin's not directly commenting, but the fact that you have senior officials being like, yeah, that was fucking fantastic, right? Like the fact that they're like so on board and happy about it should tell you a lot about like, yeah, you know what? This is totally orchestrated because this is like, and I'm going to tie it back to the article I literally just pulled up the fucking while ago. There's legitimately possibility that Donald Trump is a Russian asset, right? And like, you know, that is like the crown jewel of Vladimir Putin's FSB career, right? Got president in the Oval Office to turn on his own country and like the people that like are propping it up. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, and then like the reaction from like congress people, what are they called now? Probably still congressmen.
Yeah, still congressmen for now. Like
wasn't great.
Yeah.
So it should be noted that media outlets in the US have reported that in the morning, different Republicans met with Zelensky. Some of them had shared like Instagram lives or Facebook lives or like posts on Twitter and Instagram about like how brave Zelensky is and, you know, like pro-Ukraine messages.
Yeah.
After that happened, they were all deleted and replaced by "Go Trump" messages.
Yeah.
So
how fucking spineless can you be? Right.
Yeah, and a big, well, and we didn't see it in the video we watched, but if you get a different angle of the Oval Office, literally there's like Marco Rubio was in the room sitting there looking like he was gonna throw up.
Yeah.
Like looking like he just wanted to disappear into the couch. Another Republican that has been a huge supporter of Ukraine is Lindsey Graham. Who went on to call the meeting an utter disaster and said, I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. adding that the Ukrainian president should apologize to Trump.
I mean, we've all seen the fucking video.
Yeah. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer accused Trump of doing Vladimir Putin's dirty work and said that it was appalling. So yeah, I mean, that's bang on. Let's see. Nations that obviously were supportive of Ukraine included the EU, France, Germany, and the UK. Leaders made statements such as your dignity honors the brave of the Ukrainian people, the bravery of the Ukrainian people. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. That was Antonio Costa, who is the European Council president. Who else do we have here? We will step up our support to Ukraine so that they can continue to fight back against the aggressor. Today, it became clear that the free world needs a new leader. It's up to us Europeans to take this challenge. Who else? Germany. We stand with Ukraine in good and in testing times. We must never confuse aggressor and victim in this terrible war. They go on to say the scenes from the White House are shocking. How can you stab the president of an invaded country in the back like this? Free Europe will not betray Ukraine. Canada, Justin Trudeau wrote on Twitter, Russian illegally and unjustifiably invaded Ukraine. For 3 years now, Ukrainians have fought with courage and resilience. Their fight for democracy, freedom, and sovereignty is a fight that matters to us all. And then finally, Melanie Joly stated, we believe in supporting Ukraine. Our position has not changed. We think Ukrainians are fighting for their own freedoms, but they're also fighting for ours. And then dictator Viktor Orban from Hungary said, strong men make peace, weak men make war. Today, President at real Donald Trump stood bravely for peace, even if it was difficult for many to digest. Thank you, Mr. President.
I mean, he very clearly did not, right? But like, and I know we've talked about this like a little bit before we hopped on, but like that little bit about, you know, Viktor Orban chiming in, like Orban's another dictator, right? Like, you know, again, pot, meat, kettle, you're just trying to, it's normalizing a rhetoric that we really should be alarmed that people are trying to normalize. That, yeah, you know what, Donald Trump's totally the one trying to push for peace, when in reality, we all know Russia invaded Ukraine. They said they wouldn't do anything more after 2019. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. It's been going on for 3 years, right? Like Ukraine didn't push into Russia until what, late 2024 as an offense, like as a tactic to try and get Russia to back off, right? Ugh.
It's depressing. But
yeah.
Do you want to see the American people's reaction to this? Because it's a little uplifting.
Yeah, keep going. Let's.
Okay, so this will be so Americans aren't happy about this. There has been some great video clips put together of protests happening across the US. These are in Republican states. There's one from a news agency in the US, and then the Bulwark also put together a great one. So we'll just put them into one video.
See Russia, because JD Vance has no friends in Vermont, but he's got lots of them in Russia. So he should go there for vacation. Thank you. Keep recording.
This country's in a lot of trouble right now, and we can't keep going down this route. JD, how does it feel being Putin's puppet?
Even after the war, we need our nation.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
I guess we are
You're
watching
gambling
it.
with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Thank you.
Yes.
When we saw that there's 3 protests, we thought, well, we better have a little welcoming committee come out and just at least show our support. I thought that was unbelievable that JD Vance would come to a blue state. And it just shows what kind of a awesome, normal guy he is.
Normal?
Normal.
Normal's not the word I would use. Like, I really like that sign, "Go ski in Russia, traitor." That's a great one.
Okay, now we'll watch Republicans, people at town halls in the U.S.
Are going to be let go, but that's just the reality of it. And I feel bad that people have been laid off.
The people would like to know what you, congressmen, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
I remember having the same discussion with Republicans when Biden was elected. I say these January 6s who are yelling just as loud as you.
As the community made clear at the Library Commission meeting last Tuesday, everyone is in favor of a plaque to celebrate the library, but the vast majority are against including a MAGA acrostic. Okay. Unfortunately, it's clear that this council does not listen. So instead, I'm going to take my time to say what MAGA has stood for these past 3 weeks. MAGA stands for trying to erase trans people from existence. MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. MAGA stands for censorship and book bans. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat, but that is what it is.
It's been a mandate to the president from the American people. Am I correct? Congressional Budget Office, you know what it's going to be by 2035? It's going to be 59 trillion. Did I tell you? Did I tell you?
It is in those programs that
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As the Senate overwhelmingly
This is
voted yes.
great.
You can call me Mr. Chairman if you want.
Well, I cannot be compelled to use your preferred pronouns as you have all
Wait a
voted.
minute, we're talking about preferred pronouns. A lot of people are. I prefer to be called Chairman French. That's my preferred pronoun.
I know, and you all voted that preferred pronouns cannot be compelled speech.
I like that.
That's a smart girl. Or smart woman.
this man is incredible.
So this is a side note, but seeing all this protesting reminded me of the time that someone threw a shoe at George W. Bush. And I don't know, maybe we should bring that a little bit back in politics, but maybe not shoes, right? Clearly, okay. The Second Amendment literally was made so that Americans could take up arms against the government that they felt was unjust. Like, Yeah, I'm not going to say it explicitly because I don't want to end up on a list, but like,
We're already on a list.
yeah, we're probably already on the list. So
It's, I guess the question is, well, there's two questions. One, is it enough? And two, is this going to hold through the midterm elections? Because these were all like the Bulwark, the second one we watched, those were all Republican congressmen or senators getting just like lambasted at their town halls by like heavily red states. Do we see a blue surge at the end of 2026 and the impeachment of Donald Trump and JD Vance?
again, but okay.
Yeah,
So
but if the Democrats take the Senate and the House,
it's a legitimate possibility. Yeah. But I mean, it's like when, okay, so the reason why it might actually be possible, and I think I'm going to first like state my reasons why now. And the main reason is that during like midterms for Joe Biden, they were like, oh yeah, the red wave's coming. And like, it was not a red wave. It was like maybe a red rock in a lake, right? Like it was not a very big wave. It was like a very slight splash. So, and with all of it, like it's been 3 weeks of Donald Trump's presidency. And with all the vitriol that's like already clearly like coming up against it, and his approval rating is just like in the shitter, like it's entirely possible this could just keep going lower. But the other side of that, though, is you have an extremely volatile and hostile president who hates democracy and has a party that has actively attempted to, make it harder for people to vote. So what could happen between now and 2026? Who fucking knows, right?
yeah. Well, with the rate we're going, Trump's not on a good path because the other day he announced that, yes, the 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and a further 10% tariffs on China would happen, and they would happen today, actually, is when they went into effect, March the 4th. We're filming Tuesday night. And in fact, okay, we're going to watch this funny clip. I'm just calling it.
Yeah.
As Trump was making this announcement, the stock markets started to tank literally as he was talking, and Fox News inadvertently was showing it happen live. So let's just watch like a really quick clip of this happening, and then we'll come back.
I'm a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but he was bad on trade, very bad on trade. He allowed a lot of people, a lot of businesses to be taken. So I say that with due respect because he was so great on other things, but he was bad on trade. We are setting records right now, records like nobody has ever seen before. When you have companies like this coming in and almost 40% of their company in one signature is going to be devoted to what he does, which is one of the most important businesses in the world. That's an unbelievable thing. When Apple now is going to start building all of their plants here.
I like how you just see it, just like, it's like a little bit, it kind of goes up and it's like, nope.
Well, at one point it fell 1,000 points, and then it sort of like leveled out. The end of the day, it was like down 600, but that's like nothing to just sneeze at. Yeah. Like okay, so for example, like I don't have very many stocks, but before Trump came into office, our stocks were up like 20%.
Yeah.
Today, actually, let's do a live. Let's do this live. I'll take a hit. So before Trump came in, my US stocks were at 20. I've made 20% off of them. My all-time right now is plus 2.12%.
Really winning a lot there, Donald. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that too, because I had the same fucking experience this morning. I literally I saw one of my accounts go from up 25% to this morning down 2%. And I was like, yep, thanks, Donald. Really fucking appreciate that one.
Right? And so I guess continuing from our last conversation, at some point, clearly Americans weren't listening in November. are they going to listen when they lose a bunch of money on like their what are they called there? Their
401ks.
Yeah, their 401ks or the few stocks they might have, or like the price of eggs.
Yep.
What was today's price of eggs in the US?
Not today's, but I saw a few days ago it was $8.49.
Oh my God.
Oh, and
Today, US.
And I just got to quickly comment on this because this is really fucking stupid. The fact that someone was like, but like egg prices started
$9.53 a dozen.
Jesus.
US.
Okay, I got to mention this real quick though, because I saw there's an Instagram page I follow now because it's really funny. It's daily egg prices. So if you're curious about the daily egg prices, you should follow them because they're going to post the egg price every day until it's $1.99 again. And in the comments, one of the people was like, oh, well, you know, there's a bird flu pandemic, so Donald Trump can't do anything about that. And then the like series of comments afterwards were like, you are aware that Donald Trump is the one cutting jobs responsible for containing the bird flu pandemic, which is making eggs and chicken way more expensive, right? And then all of a sudden the person's fucking vanished. And it's like, wow, fucking idiot.
Yeah. And for context, $10 USD is $15 Canadian.
Yeah. And here in Canada, I can buy 24 eggs at Costco for $9.99 still. So like, get fucked, America. We're still winning the egg war.
Also, we don't want to be the 51st state.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's then take a look at Justin Trudeau's address to Canadians today. We are going to play the full thing for context. It's 15 minutes long. I'll leave a like timestamp if you already heard it and want to move on. But Rio has not seen it. Yeah. So Rio needs to see it. And then we'll try to have a like wrap up conversation after that.
The United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. Canadians are reasonable and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake. At the moment, the US tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response. Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time. Encore aujourd'hui, on se voit forcé d'imposer des droits de douane de 25%
to introduce 25% tariffs on $155 billion of U.S. merchandise.
De marchandises américaines, excusez-moi.
$30 billion will come into effect immediately, and in 21 days, $125 billion of U.S. merchandise will be hit.
Be challenging these illegal actions by filing dispute resolution claims at the World Trade Organization and through the USMCA. But in the meantime, our tariffs will remain in place until the U.S. tariffs are withdrawn, and not a moment sooner. And should these tariffs not cease, we are in active and ongoing discussions with provinces and territories to pursue several non-tariff measures. Measures which will demonstrate that there are no winners in a trade war. Now, just like I did a month ago, I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both. They've chosen to raise costs for American consumers on everyday essential items like groceries and gas, on major purchases like cars and homes, and everything in between. They've chosen to harm American national security, impeding access to the abundant critical minerals, energy, building materials, and fertilizers that we have and that the United States needs to grow and prosper. They've chosen to launch a trade war that will, first and foremost, harm American families. They've chosen to sabotage their own agenda that was supposed to usher in a new golden age for the United States. And they've chosen to undermine the incredible work we've done together to tackle the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that must be wiped from the face of the earth. So on that point, let me be crystal clear. There is absolutely no justification or need whatsoever for these tariffs today. Now, the legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false. Let's look at the facts. Our border is already safe and secure. Far less than 1% of fentanyl flows and less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States comes from Canada. But we acted because we know we can always do better. We responded to concerns, including from the president, by implementing an ambitious $1.3 billion border plan. A border plan that includes generational investments in new AI and imaging tools to stop the flow of fentanyl in its tracks, stronger coordination and information sharing with American agencies, along with the deployment of drones, helicopters, and additional personnel to keep our border secure. Now, a month ago, as part of an agreement with the United States that paused the tariffs, we made further commitments. We appointed Kevin Brosseau as our fentanyl czar, who dedicated a multi-decade career in law enforcement to combating organized crime networks and drug trafficking. We designated 7 drug cartels, sick, evil groups who cynically profit off the pain and suffering of people on both sides of the border, as the terrorist organizations that they are. And just yesterday, we launched a new joint operations partnership supported by a $200 million investment between Canada's security and law enforcement agencies, a partnership that will enhance the coordination of information and intelligence in order to thwart criminal gangs involved in the illegal fentanyl trade. And critically, our actions are working. As the U.S. Customs and Border Protection just acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures from January compared to December, to a near zero low of less than half an ounce seized in January, even with all the further enforcements and actions we've taken at the borders. In sum, we stepped up. We engaged closely and constructively with the president and his administration. We did everything we promised. We stuck to our word. And we did it because we believe in working together to protect our citizens. Now I want to speak directly to one specific American, Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal
that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see. And now to my fellow Canadians. I won't sugarcoat it. This is going to be tough, even though we're all going to pull together, because that's what we do. We will use every tool at our disposal so Canadian workers and businesses can weather this storm. From expanding EI benefits and making them more flexible to providing direct supports to businesses, we will be there as needed to help. But Canada, make no mistake, no matter how long this lasts, no matter what the cost, the federal government and other orders of government will be there for you. We will defend Canadian jobs. We will take measures to prevent predatory behavior that threatens Canadian companies because of the impacts of this trade war, leaving them open to takeovers. We will relentlessly fight to protect our economy. We will stand up for Canadians every single second of every single day because this country is worth fighting for. Les derniers mois ont été stressants.
The recent months have been stressful and, in fact, exhausting for all of us.
Mais je crois qu'on peut
But I believe
être rassuré
we can be
par
reassured
l'incroyable
by
solidarité
the incredible
dont on a tous
solidarity
été
we've
témoins
seen
entre nous.
among
Solidarité
Canadians.
entre nos entreprises,
Solidarity among
nos syndicats,
businesses,
la société
among
civile,
unions, the
les
civil
communautés
society,
autochtones,
indigenous
tous les
communities,
Canadiens.
and all Canadians.
L'ensemble de la société canadienne parle
All of
d'une
Canadian
seule
society
voix.
is speaking with
Qu'on
a
se
single
fasse
voice
entendre de nos
so that we
partenaires
can be
américains
heard by
pour
our
illustrer
US
que
partners
l'imposition
and to
des droits
illustrate that the
douanes,
imposition
c'est
of
une
these
très
tariffs
mauvaise idée.
is a very bad idea.
En même temps,
At the same
on
time,
travaille à l'interne
we
pour
are
faire
working
tomber les
internally
obstacles
to
au commerce
remove
entre
the
nos provinces et
barriers
territoires.
to internal trade between the provinces and territories.
marchés à
We're
travers le
working
monde.
to try and reach new markets around the world, to build an economy even more strong and resilient than before. In recent years, I've had a number of opportunities to talk to global leaders, and my message is always the same. Canada is a reliable partner, and our door is wide open. In recent weeks, we have also redoubled our efforts to work with Mexico, which is also being hit with these tariffs. Together, we will seek new ways of working together and to provide mutual support in the face of this threat. In the face of uncertainty and worry, Canadians have shown so much solidarity. I saw you sharing lists of Canadian products to help your loved ones and friends and support Canadian businesses. I saw you change your travel plans to stay in Canada rather than going to the United States. I saw you redouble your efforts to support our small businesses and our workers here in Canada. I saw you defend our culture and ensure it can flourish. I saw you encourage our athletes with incredible fervor, and I thought I could never be even prouder of my country and my compatriots. And yet, I still have something to ask of you. Do not give up. This is the time to redouble your efforts, to stand up for our country, to do everything we possibly can to choose Canada and defend Canada. Together, we will get through some tough times. But after seeing you and seeing your reaction in recent weeks, I have to say, I have never been as optimistic with respect to the future of our beautiful country, in spite of all the challenges we're facing right now. Canada remains the best country in the world. We have so many reasons to be proud of our home, to be proud of our land, but I'm especially proud of our ability to come together when that is required. Canadians of different backgrounds, who speak different languages, have different religions. But, you know, when it comes time to defending our country, we speak with a single voice and walk hand in hand. In spite of all, Canadians will always be relying on each other.
Now, we've been through tough spots before. But every time we've faced long odds and seemingly insurmountable obstacles, we've not only survived, we've emerged stronger than ever. Because when it comes to defending our great nation, there is no price we all aren't willing to pay. And today is no different. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
All right, so I just got to quickly say, like, I have my conniptions with Justin Trudeau, but he's still a very eloquent speaker, and I think that's a very good speech. Because, like, all right, he's right? Like, he's right.
So hard for you.
Yeah, it took me a second to just kind of like, because it's been a while since I've said Justin Trudeau is right about something. Like, it's been a while. I think it's, what was it? I think like well, no, I was going to say, like, I think the last time I said that was like probably like mid 2021. Like, yeah, like mid 2021, like late 2022, somewhere in that time period. You know, that like period where it's like it was still kind of COVID, but like, or like COVID was on its way out, but like it wasn't totally gone yet. You know what I mean? Like, so it's been a while since I've said Justin Trudeau is right. So like, but he's right, because a trade, like starting a trade war with your closest ally is something that all of your adversaries around the world want you to do, right? Like, it undermines.
Pretty happy about it.
Yeah, and this is something that's kind of come up in like even Donald Trump's past term or like previous term, right? Where he seemed to be doing a lot of things that just happened to benefit Russia and China, which, you know, now it's just becoming a lot more obvious. And you can see that it's just a lot more obvious now. And what that does is it destabilizes trust in the United States, which destabilizes the rest of the world's democracies, because a smaller democracy is a weaker democracy. Right? I think that's I had to like stop to think from like how I connected Justin Trudeau's right to like that, because like at the end of the day, Canada is still a relatively small democracy. We are 40 million people relative to 400 million. We are literally 10% of the United States in terms of population. But yeah, I've had my problems with Justin Trudeau, but he's right. And like, you know what? The fact that Canadians rallied so hard around the flag as soon as this stuff started coming around, like, what was it? We left for our trip, like me and my girlfriend, and then we came home and our neighbor, like right behind us on their side of the fence, hung up a Canadian flag. And then I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to shovel your driveway next time it snows, because like I have the snowblower and I know you're old, right?
Isn't it nice though to see like Canadian flags on people's cars and not go, oh, you fucking convoyer?
Yeah, it's a very weird feeling now. I went from like literally, I don't know, 2 years ago where I'd be like, ugh, like you're one of those guys, to like, no, fuck yeah, you're a good patriotic Canadian. I can get behind that. And I literally went into my basement today and pulled out my Canadian flag. And I'm still trying to figure out where to put it in my house, but like I have it. So I was like, fuck yeah. Canada, baby.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's just so depressing. And
Yeah.
I just so like, I know it's late, but something you said when you were like, who does that benefit? It made me remember that Rachel Maddow did this fucking awesome piece this week on MSNBC. And we can we don't have to watch all of it, but I want you to watch it and you'll understand. So let's just.
No, hold up. Can you go back? Because I need audio and I cannot hear it.
He was kind of inaudible, but.
Okay. Nope, I got nothing still.
Oh, I know what it is. I think. Hang on. Try this. So worth it. Hang on. Okay, let me know if you can hear this. Please, 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 word.
Listen, it's Friday night. Let's just do this. Let's just cut to the chase here. Let's do a little look-see at the landscape to see why exactly it is so hard for Republicans to deal with this topic. What exactly is so hard for Republicans to talk about? What exactly is it that we are doing, up to and including switching sides in a war? But it's not limited to that. It's all things that don't seem like good news for the United States. That makes them particularly hard to talk about. But nevertheless, with Donald Trump back in the White House, we keep doing these things relentlessly and urgently, and they all cut in the same direction. And it's really hard for Republicans to explain because of what it obviously means. It's clear why they do not want to talk about this stuff, and it gets all the more clear when you just line this stuff up. Let me show you what I mean. Here's one. Donald Trump's handpicked attorney general. She gets sworn in to lead the U.S. Justice Department. On her first day on the job, what is the first thing she does? Headline: U.S. cuts task forces on foreign influence and Russian sanctions. Quote, in a memo sent to staff Wednesday, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi revealed she had disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force, a unit dedicated to investigating violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Bondi did not elaborate, but figures on the Republican Party's conspiratorial far right have accused the government of abusing FARA to unfairly target political operatives like Paul Manafort, Trump's 2016 campaign chair, who was indicted in a probe into Russian influence in that year's U.S. election.
You mean a literal
Also on
fucking
Wednesday,
Russian
the day of her
agent?
swearing in, Bondi disbanded Task Force Klepto Capture, an initiative started in 2022 to enforce sanctions against Russia. Who's all that good for? Shutting down the Foreign Influence Task Force, shutting down enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and getting rid of the task force that enforces sanctions against Russia. Who are all those things good for? Why'd we do those things? And so urgently, her first day on the job. Here's another one, which happened that same day. Quote, in a little notice directive on her first day in office, Attorney General Pam Bondi ordered a halt to a years-old federal law enforcement effort to combat secret influence campaigns by China, Russia, and other adversaries that try to curry favor and sow chaos in American politics. Buried on the fourth page of one of 14 policy memos Bondi issued Wednesday, the order disbands the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. Last year, Justice Department prosecutors and FBI agents exposed an alleged scheme in which Russia-backed media funneled $10 million to a conservative U.S. media company that hired prominent right-wing influencers.
We all know who they're talking about.
Here's how the New York Times bannered that one.
Yep.
Bluntly. Quote, Trump dismantles government fight against foreign influence operations. Dozens of employees who had been working to fight foreign interference in U.S. elections have been reassigned or forced out. That includes not only the FBI, but also CISA, the cybersecurity division at Homeland Security, which we soon learned the president's top campaign donor had installed a 19-year-old operative who reportedly personally operates websites in Russia and who has been associated with multiple criminal cyber hacking gangs. That's who the president's top campaign donor installed at CISA, giving him full access to systems and data at the U.S. government cybersecurity agency. A 19-year-old kid with ties to Russia and cybercrime.
Jesus Christ. It's like they
Who's that
literally just
good for?
handpicked a troll farm.
How do you explain to your constituents who that's good for? and why we are doing that as a country. And what else? What else is hard to explain to ye olde constituents when it comes to that radical switch in the US government that Lisa Murkowski described? How about this? Headline: CIA plans largest mass firing in nearly 50 years. Well, that's good for someone. Who's that good for? That came right after this. Oh, Trump's new handpicked CIA director sent a list of CIA employees to the White House in an unclassified email. Quote, current officials confirmed that the CIA had sent the names of employees to the Office of Personnel Management, complying with an executive order signed by President Trump. Senator Mark Warner, top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, wrote that the sharing of the officers' names was a, quote, disastrous national security development.
Oh, shit.
One former agency officer called
shit.
the reporting of the names in an unclassified email a, quote, counterintelligence disaster.
You literally just gave up all
yes,
your
a disaster for the United States and for U.S. intelligence in particular. But very good news for someone. Hey, speaking of things that ought to be classified, headline: How Trump's security clearances order could make the U.S. vulnerable. The plan to give temporary security clearances without background checks opens the door to breaches and espionage, experts say.
No fucking shit.
Giving out security clearances without background checks that look for things like, criminal entanglements, lots of debt, anything that they could blackmail you over, or any contacts with foreign governments. To make sure that you're not, secretly working for, we're not doing the background checks anymore. Trump just has ordered that the classified material be made available to whoever he says with no checks. That doesn't seem like good news for the United States. But again, it's good news for someone. How about when they decided that the first agency they would destroy would be USAID? Who cheered the loudest for that? Russia welcomes USAID cuts, calls agency machine for interfering. Yeah, it was fantastic news for someone. No one was seen to benefit more or to be more loudly cheering it on than Vladimir Putin. And that was before the specific news confirmed today that among the projects Trump is explicitly and specifically turning off right now, this week, is the program by which the U.S. helps Ukraine keep its electric grid up and running. Even though Russia has repeatedly targeted that electric grid throughout the war. Because Russia's idea of how it wants to win the unprovoked war it declared on our ally is to make the civilian population, including kids and the elderly and hospital patients and everyone, their best idea for how to prosecute that war is to cause them to freeze to death by bombing the electric grid in February. So more than any other evident targeting, they have targeted the electric grid that serves the civilian population in Ukraine. It is the United States that has helped Ukraine masterfully keep the power grid up despite those repeated onslaughts by Russia. Until this week, when Trump just cut it off. Which is good news for someone, right?
If you want to stop there, but also I just want to mention this because I feel like it's worth mentioning that I pulled up Paul Manafort's Wikipedia page when she mentioned Manafort because he's literally a fucking convicted Russian agent, and the list of people he's lobbied on behalf of, and it says first paragraph, former president of Ukraine Viktor Yanukovych, known attempted dictator, former dictator of the Philippines Ferdinand Marcos, whose son is now the president, by the way. Former dictator of Zaire, Mobutu Sese Seko, literally named in the dictator's handbook. And Angolan guerrilla leader Jonas Savimbi. So clearly not a dude who's backed a lot of good dudes in the history of politics, right? And actually it's funny you brought all that stuff up because I knew vaguely kind of what was happening there because I saw the appointees, who's doing what, and I did get a few fucking articles about Hegseth because fucking Meta's always listening. So I keep seeing that crap, and I stand by it, right? Who benefits from all of this? And it's literally American adversaries who all of a sudden are now bending over backwards to appease Russia. And I don't remember where I saw this, but like there was a quote from like, it was like a Russian KGB agent or something from like the 1950s who was like, we can't actually win a war with America, but we can destroy them from within. And like took 70 years, but here we are, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I know that clip was a little long, but I think it kind of drives home the point more so than what Trudeau was trying to say, right? Like, gee, who does this all benefit? Like, coming back to tariffs, who does Canada and the US destroying each other benefit?
Yeah.
It's not Europe. It's not Canada. It's still not the US.
Yep. It's Russia and China. Like India loosely in like the sense of they're like the third fucking, or like, what was it, fifth largest military or something like that now. Like, there's a new axis and Russia, like America just joined it basically, right?
It's so weird. And like, I keep going back and forth because I don't know. I can't decide. And like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You know this about me.
Yeah.
But I can't decide if this is about Trump's weird ass imperialism, Trump's stuck in the Reagan-esque era of thinking and still thinking somehow. Like, I saw an article earlier this week, and I think the Pod Save guys were also talking about this, how Trump seems to be still stuck in this like 1950s mindset where like, if you can just bring manufacturing back to the US, it'll make all these like good jobs again, instead of like understanding that we live in a globalized world now and technology is actually the way forward. Which is kind of funny because while I was waiting for you to join earlier, CBC published an article with the headline, Trump wants to return to 1913, and that isn't good for anyone.
Yeah.
So I can't decide if it's like he's just stuck there, if this is like an imperialistic thing, which I think it is, where he just like wants to improve or add to America's like land mass. And then finally, or is this just like, does Putin have something on this person? Probably.
I mean, like, okay, first of all, Donald Trump's fucking convicted of hush money to a porn star. And like, that's the tip of the iceberg, I'm pretty sure. Like,
Dear
this is
God,
someone who like,
please do not release any videos to the world. I do not want to have to watch it.
this is like, I just want to mention, like, Donald Trump is someone who like casually hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, who like, very famously did not kill himself in prison, right? Like, I think we're on the same page here.
What? He didn't commit suicide?
Yeah, he didn't commit suicide in prison when the fucking, what was it, the cameras went out, the guard just happened to go on break. Like, no one was fucking watching him at all. And Donald Trump knowingly hung out with this guy and be like, oh yeah, he likes going, like, he likes girls young.
Right? Like, let's be clear. This was like the Epstein stuff. Oh my God, we should do a whole.
Oh yeah, it's huge. I'm not just saying it's only Trump, but
flew around with him all the time.
Yeah,
but,
it's not just
Predator. Yeah. People seem to forget that.
Yeah, it's not just Trump, but I'm just saying, like, there's, the tip of the iceberg is fucking Stormy Daniels.
Yeah,
the rest of it, fucking probably buried somewhere in his beady little eyes. So.
And that's just it, right? So, like, I suspect it's kind of all of it, and that now we're gonna have to figure out what the fuck we're gonna do, because for at least the next 4 years. Like, I don't know. I know people are going to call me crazy, but literally in a month, Trump has managed to change the world order, and NATO's going to collapse. The Axis powers are going to be like China, North Korea, Russia, Hungary, and Belarus, who, by the way, also is like, go Trump.
Yep.
And there's going to be like Canada, the EU, the UK, the Ukraine.
Yep.
What the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know. And then we have like our, going back to tariffs, we have like our own country who are all fighting each other. Like this afternoon, Polyev did a press conference thing that was like 8 minutes long, and he said that there needs to be tax cuts, complained that Parliament was closed, said that we should open Parliament so that we could like pass tax cuts, which is hilarious because you know immediately they're going to vote down the government.
Yeah, they're immediately going to call an election. Like that's the fucking scheme here. Like we all see through Peter Pontiac. Like,
and then Singh was talking about how they like need to open Parliament to like boost EI programs. Provinces all across Canada were pulling American booze from shelves again.
Yep.
Finance Minister LeBlanc repeated a statement about additional measures, which would include non-tariff options, but like didn't actually say what they were. Chrystia Freeland was on MSNBC yesterday saying that if she wins, which she won't, but if she wins, she's going to put 100% tariff on Teslas.
Yeah.
And cancel all SpaceX contracts and encourage like provincial governments to do the same. Doug Ford put a 25% surcharge on electricity flowing and then said that if they didn't change their tune, he was just going to cut them off. What the fuck? Russia's just sitting over there laughing at this point.
oh yeah, like it's like in Donald Trump's first term, he had a meeting with Putin without an American translator or transcriber, and then there's literally I don't remember what it was, but there were like eyewitness accounts of like basically Vladimir Putin got out of the meeting laughing because like they were just like, you know, he basically went to his officials and immediately started like laughing, be like, yeah, we got him, right? Because like
it's hilarious because we all know that Putin speaks English. He's a fucking former KGB operative.
Yeah, he has to speak English. There's video footage of him speaking English.
Literally.
Yeah. So like,
oh my god.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot with what's happening now, and like, I will say before I left too, I was really like happy to see that there were suddenly a lot more articles about like, can and should Canada join the EU? And I was like, absolutely, it fucking should. And then I saw another article, I think it was this morning. I at least saw the headline of like, what was it? Justin Trudeau had a meeting with King Charles, and then like to kind of like kick off the conversation of like, you know, Canada now needs security guarantees, right? Like,
yeah, and I mean, it's interesting, right? Because if Carney wins, which he will, unless the Liberals are morons, which we had that conversation too.
Yep.
He has ties to the UK. And actually, I didn't know this, but did you know he has a UK citizenship and is in the like said he would renounce it?
I had no idea, but
yeah, I didn't either until I can't remember where I saw it. Maybe on Martin. Anyway, but he has UK citizenship. He was their governor. He has like lots of like ins there. So it really wouldn't surprise me that if he comes out on top and is Prime Minister of Canada, if those conversations start to get taken way more seriously.
Yeah.
And like at that point too, like Europe's probably sitting there going, well, Canada's like fucking right on their border.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't even know what else to say.
Yeah, like, and I say this as someone who read 1984, just in case anyone's like, you never fucking read 1984. No, I read the book several times. Like, are you familiar with the geopolitics of the story at all? Or vaguely?
That book is literally on my shelf right there.
Cool, just making sure, because like,
did you notice that protester sign in the video I showed you earlier that said 1984? What the fuck?
No, I didn't see
that.
Yeah.
It was
Damn,
in
I wish I saw it,
the protesters, the first video we watched about JD.
Yeah, but like, it's, you know, if you look at the map of 1984 to like basically what's happening now, that's where you kind of, and like that's what you kind of see, right? You see concentrations around China, Russia, and the United States all devolving into the different forms of totalitarianism, and like, you know, fighting then over like in a perpetual war over resources concentrated in certain areas, right? So like, which is all just exacerbated by the fact and the existence of nuclear weapons, right? So like, that's what you're looking at is happening now, is you're seeing this axis form, and we all know Russia has had imperial ambitions for the rest of Europe, like since the USSR.
We have two new Hitlers.
Yeah, we have two new Hitlers, one in Russia and one in fucking the United States. Great. I mean, like Winnie the Pooh, Xi Jinping, we already knew about, right? Like that one was pretty obvious when he got into power, right? But like this is just next level problematic. So
good luck,
and,
America.
Yeah, and like I know we're probably going to be called fear mongers again, but like seriously, how can you like see what's happening in the world and not draw the comparison, or like not see that like, you know, you don't do this to your friends. Like if like hypothetical example, like if I literally went to your house, Nicole, and I stole your two dogs, would you take that shit? Like, would you still call me your friend? Probably not, right?
Rob might be happy for you to take Frankie, but who is not pregnant, by the way.
Darn.
No dog for you.
Guess I have to buy a dog or adopt a dog. But like, you know, you don't do that type of thing to your friends. Is like the analogy, right?
Yeah.
And like you now have an actively hostile to Canada president in the Oval Office, who's also actively hostile to the rest of NATO and the EU.
Yeah, because his friend is Putin, except not really, because Putin thinks that he's, you know, an idiot.
Idiot. That's what he is. He's a useful idiot, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, just wait until you hear about Trump Moscow, and then all this like, and if you don't you don't connect the dots at that point, I feel sorry for you, you know?
Okay. On that note, let's end on something funny that I found earlier. Where are you? Okay. Not Angel's face, but also kind of Angel's face.
Yeah, which by the way, thank you for that, because
Did you notice me like move this down earlier?
yeah, because I was like, oh, thank God, the dog.
It's like we need Angel's face. Okay, so thanks for watching, everyone. We are gonna put this up and then I will end recording, but I think this is like just a great way to end this. This has been going around on Facebook and it's called The Response We All Wanted from Zelensky. Oh my God. Okay, bye everyone.
Yeah.